The phone's blue glow lit up my face at 2:17 a.m., and there she was, laughing in someone else's arms on a stranger's TikTok live, wearing the dress I'd never seen before, in a room I didn't recognize. My wife, Olivia, the woman who told me 3 hours earlier she was too exhausted for anything tonight and went to bed at 9 p.m., was very much awake, very much dressed up, and very much not alone. I sat there in our dark bedroom, the sound of her soft breathing coming from beside me, or so I thought, until I realized what I was hearing was just the white noise machine she insisted we buy last month because my snoring kept her up. My hands started shaking as I turned up the volume on my phone, and that's when I heard it, her laugh, that specific laugh she used to reserve only for me, the one that made her nose scrinkle and her eyes disappear into crescents. The TikTok account belonged to someone named DJ_Marcus_Miami, and he was streaming from what looked like a private party, panning his camera across a crowd of people dancing, drinking, living there Thursday night like it was New Year's Eve, and there, in the background for just 7 seconds before the camera moved away, was my wife of 12 years, her head thrown back in laughter, a man's hand resting on the small of her back, the same spot where I used to rest mine when we'd slow dance in our kitchen on Sunday mornings. But what I saw in those 7 seconds was just the beginning, because when I looked beside me in bed, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Before we continue with what happened next, if you're invested in this story and want to hear more real-life experiences like this, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, what's coming next will blow your mind, and you don't want to miss future stories. We share raw, unfiltered truth here. No sugarcoating, just real people dealing with real betrayal, real heartbreak, and real redemption. So go ahead, subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's get back to the story, because what I discovered next changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The covers were arranged perfectly, pillows stuffed under the comforter in a shape that, in the darkness, I'd assumed was her sleeping form. Olivia had done this deliberately, carefully, like she'd practiced it. Like this wasn't the first time she'd created this illusion while I slept beside what I thought was my wife. I reached out and touched the pillows. Still warm from the heating blanket she always used, because she claimed she was always cold. Another lie, and what I was beginning to realize was probably an ocean of them. My heart hammered against my ribs as I grabbed my phone again and went back to the TikTok live, my fingers fumbling, desperate to find her again in that crowd, to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind, that what I'd seen was real. The live stream was still going. DJ Marcus was now doing some kind of remix. The crowd was cheering, and I scrolled through the comments, watching usernames I didn't know leave fire emojis and heart eyes, until one comment caught my attention. That couple in the red is sulfur monoxide cute together. Relationship goals. I felt bile rise in my throat because Olivia was wearing red. I'd seen it in that brief glimpse, a red dress I'd never seen in her closet that she'd never worn for me. I jumped out of bed and went to her closet, sliding the door open as quietly as I could, searching through her clothes like a detective, like a stranger in my own home, until I realized I was looking for evidence of a life. She was living without me, and that's when I found the shoebox hidden behind her winter boots. And what was inside changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Inside that shoebox wasn't shoes, it was a second phone. A cheap, prepaid smartphone with a cracked screen and a pink case covered in stickers I'd never seen before. My hands trembled as I pressed the power button, praying it was locked, praying I wouldn't be able to get in, because some part of me still wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation for all of this. But it wasn't locked. It opened right up to a home screen filled with apps I recognized. Snapchat, Instagram, under a username I didn't know, WhatsApp, and dozens of text message threads with names that meant nothing to me. I opened the messages and my entire world tilted sideways because there they were. Months of conversations, intimate messages, photos I couldn't unsee, plans made and executed while I was at work or asleep or sitting right next to her on the couch watching Netflix and thinking everything was fine. The most recent message was from tonight, sent at 8:47 p.m., just before she'd kissed me goodnight and told me she loved me. On my way, baby. Wore the red dress you love. Can't wait to see you. My vision blurred as I read it again. Then again, the words burning themselves into my brain. There were heart emojis, inside jokes I wasn't part of, plans for a future that didn't include me, and underneath it all, a pet name that made my stomach turn. The same pet name I'd called her since our first date 13 years ago. When we were just kids who thought love was enough, I sat there on the closet floor, holding evidence of her double life. When suddenly my phone buzzed with a notification that made me realize that TikTok Live was still streaming, and she was still there. I scrambled back to my phone, my real phone, and there she was again. This time, front and center, as DJ Marcus panned across the crowd, doing some kind of couples dance challenge. Olivia was pressed against a tall man with dark hair and a leather jacket, their bodies moving in sync like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Like they knew each other's rhythms. Like they were the couple everyone else in that room wished they could be. The comments section exploded with admiration. Strangers typing they're so in love, and I want what they have. And I wanted to scream at my screen that what they had was my wife, my life, my future that I'd been building brick by brick for over a decade. I watched, paralyzed, as the song ended and he dipped her low, her hair sweeping the floor, and when he pulled her back up, he kissed her, right there in front of hundreds of people watching live. In front of me, watching from our bedroom in the dark, like some kind of ghost haunting his own life, the kiss lasted 5 seconds, maybe 6, and in that moment, I aged 100 years. Watching the woman I'd pledged my life to giving herself to someone else with the kind of passion we hadn't shared in months. Maybe years, if I was being honest with myself. When they broke apart, she was glowing, absolutely radiant in a way I couldn't remember seeing in so long, and that hurt more than the kiss itself. The realization that whoever this man was, he made her happier than I did. I should have confronted her right then, driven to wherever she was and exposed everything. But instead, I did something that would either save me or destroy me. I kept watching, and I started recording everything. For the next 43 minutes, I sat in that dark closet like a detective on a stakeout, screen recording the TikTok Live, photographing every message on her secret phone, documenting timestamps and locations and faces I didn't recognize but would never forget. My lawyer brain, the one I used at the firm every day to build airtight cases for clients, kicked into gear, overriding the heartbroken husband who wanted to curl up and disappear. I went through her secret Instagram, finding photos of them together at restaurants I'd never been to, on weekend trips that she'd told me were girls' getaways with her college friends, at concerts and beaches and hotel rooms that documented a completely separate relationship running parallel to ours. There were posts from 8 months ago, which meant this wasn't some recent mistake or momentary weakness. This was a fully formed relationship with history and inside jokes and a future they were actively planning. I found messages about how he doesn't suspect anything, and I just need a few more months to figure out the right time, and worst of all, conversations about me, about how I was too focused on work and emotionally unavailable and nothing like you. Baby, words that cut deeper than any admission of physical betrayal because they meant she'd been unhappy for so long, and I'd been too blind or too busy or too comfortable to notice. Every screenshot I took felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But I kept going because I knew that in divorce court, documentation was everything, and some cold, practical part of me was already 3 steps ahead, already protecting my future, even as my present crumbled into dust. By 3:30 a.m., I had enough evidence to destroy her in any court in the country, but the TikTok Live was still going. And what I saw next made me realize this wasn't just an affair, it was something much worse. DJ Marcus's voice boomed through my phone speaker, loud and celebratory, cutting through the music as he called everyone to gather around. The camera focused on Olivia and the man in the leather jacket, both of them grinning like they'd just won the lottery, and my heart dropped into my stomach before I even heard the words. "Yo, yo, yo, everyone shut up for a second," Marcus shouted, his voice thick with excitement. "My boy Tyler here has something to say." Tyler, so that was his name, the man who'd been sleeping with my wife, now had an identity, a face, a voice, as he grabbed the microphone and pulled Olivia closer to him. "So, some of y'all know, we've been keeping this quiet for a while," Tyler started, and the crowd around them whooped and hollered, clearly in on whatever secret was about to be revealed. But tonight feels right. Tonight feels like the night to make it official. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone as I watched Olivia's face light up with anticipation. her hand covering her mouth in that gesture she always made when she was trying not to cry from happiness, the same gesture she'd made when I proposed to her on a beach in Mexico 12 years ago. "Olivia, baby," Tyler continued, his voice dropping into something softer, more intimate despite the crowd of 50 people gathered around them. "You walked into my life 8 months ago and changed everything. You made me believe in love again, in second chances, in finding your person even when you thought it was too late." The crowd was eating it up. Phones out, recording this moment. And somewhere in the back of my mind I registered that this video would probably be all over social media by morning, that our friends and family might see it before I could control the narrative. Before I could explain, and then Tyler reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and my entire world exploded into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "Will you marry me?" The words echoed through my phone speaker. Through the TikTok live being watched by 1,847 people, according to the viewer count at the top of my screen, through our bedroom, through our life, destroying everything in their path like a tornado made of betrayal and lies. Olivia's scream of joy was piercing, genuine, the sound of a woman getting everything she'd ever wanted, and she jumped into Tyler's arms as he slipped a ring onto her finger. A ring that caught the light and sparkled like stars. Probably more expensive than the one I'd saved for 6 months to buy her all those years ago when we were just starting out. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Someone popped a bottle of champagne, and DJ Marcus started playing some romantic song while everyone surrounded the newly engaged couple, hugging them, congratulating them, celebrating a love story that was built on the complete destruction of mine. I watched as Olivia held up her hand, showing off the ring to the camera, to the TikTok audience, to me. Though she had no idea I was watching, had no idea that her husband of 12 years was bearing witness to her engagement to another man. The comments section went absolutely insane with congratulations and heart emojis and people saying they'd been shipping this couple for weeks, which meant this wasn't even the first time they'd appeared on DJ Marcus's live streams. Meant that they'd been publicly dating in these spaces while I'd been completely oblivious, living in a marriage that had apparently ended months ago without anyone bothering to tell me. I sat there in the closet, surrounded by her clothes and shoes and the life we'd built together, watching her celebrate a future with someone else. And something inside me shattered so completely I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to put the pieces back together. But as I watched her kiss him again, watched her show off that ring, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to confront her tonight. I was going to let her come home and keep playing this game because I had my own plan now. I put her secret phone back exactly where I'd found it, arranging the shoebox and winter boots precisely as they'd been, because if she'd been this careful for 8 months, she'd notice if anything was disturbed. Then I climbed back into bed, rearranged the pillows she'd left as a decoy, and lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own heartbeat thunder in my ears, waiting for her to come home. The TikTok live ended around 4 a.m., and I tracked her location using the Find My iPhone feature we'd set up years ago for safety. A feature I'd never once thought to check because I'd trusted her completely, which now felt like the most naive thing in the world. She was 17 minutes away, then 12, then 8, and I forced my breathing to slow down, forced my body to relax, practicing the performance I'd have to give when she slipped into bed beside me, pretending she'd been there all night. At 4:23 a.m., I heard the garage door open, heard her car pull in, heard the sound of her heels clicking on the tile floor as she made her way through the house. I closed my eyes and regulated my breathing, and when our bedroom door creaked open, I didn't move, didn't flinch, played the role of the sleeping husband while she tiptoed across the carpet. I felt the bed shift as she climbed in, heard the rustle of her removing the decoy pillows, and then she was there, her back to me, settling in like this was just another normal night. The smell of alcohol and unfamiliar cologne wafted off her, mixing with her perfume. The perfume I'd bought her for Christmas, and my stomach churned, but I kept my eyes closed, kept my breathing steady. She let out a soft sigh, the kind she always made when she was content, and whispered something I barely heard. "I'm sorry," she said to the darkness. To herself, maybe to me, though she thought I was asleep, "I'm so sorry." Those 2 words should have broken me. But instead, they hardened something in my chest, because sorry doesn't cover engagement rings and secret phones and 8 months of elaborate lies. And when morning came, I knew exactly what I had to do. When my alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. like it did every Friday morning, I played my role perfectly. I stretched, yawned, rolled over, and kissed Olivia on the forehead like I'd done 1,000 times before, and said, "Good morning," beautiful in that sleepy voice of a man who had no idea his world had ended 6 hours earlier. She stirred, smiled up at me with those green eyes I'd fallen in love with in college, and said, "Morning, babe," without a trace of guilt, without a single crack in her mask. I got up, showered, got dressed for work, and went through our morning routine like an actor in a play I'd performed for 12 years. And she matched me beat for beat, asking if I wanted eggs or oatmeal, telling me about some dream she'd had, a lie on top of lies, complaining that she'd slept terribly and felt exhausted, setting up her excuse for tonight, when she'd probably be too tired again and disappear to wherever Tyler was waiting. Over coffee, I watched her scroll through her real phone, the one I was supposed to know about, and I wondered if she was texting him on the secret one hidden in her closet, telling him good morning, reliving their engagement, planning their future while sitting across from me at the breakfast table we'd picked out together at IKEA 7 years ago. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, catching me staring, and I smiled and said, "Just how lucky I am to have you." And I watched something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or was it relief that I was still so clueless? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, said "I love you" with what almost sounded like sincerity, and I squeezed back and said, "I love you too." And both of us were lying. Both of us were acting, but only one of us knew we were in a play. As I grabbed my briefcase and headed for the door, she called out, "Have a good day at work, honey." And I turned back, looked at her standing there in my old college t-shirt and pajama shorts, looking so much like the girl I'd married, and I said, "Tonight, let's do something special, just you and me. I'll make reservations somewhere nice." Her face lit up, that same face that had glowed with joy when Tyler proposed 6 hours ago, and she said, "That sounds perfect," and I knew she'd cancel on Tyler. Knew she'd choose the safety of our marriage for one more night before destroying it completely. Knew that she still wanted to have her cake and eat it, too, but what she didn't know was that tonight's special dinner would be the last meal we'd ever share as husband and wife, because I'd spent my entire morning at work putting together something that would end this charade once and for all. At my law firm, I locked my office door and spent 3 hours doing what I did best, building a case. I consulted with my senior partner, Tom, a man who'd been through his own messy divorce and knew exactly what I was facing, and together we constructed a strategy that would protect me financially, emotionally, and legally. I transferred the videos and screenshots from my phone to a secure cloud drive, printed physical copies, documented everything with timestamps and locations, and even found Tyler's full name, Tyler James Morrison, through some basic social media detective work that revealed he was a personal trainer at a gym across town. Divorced himself just a year ago, no kids, and apparently very active in the nightlife scene that Olivia had been secretly part of. Tom helped me open a separate bank account and quietly started moving assets, not illegally, but strategically, protecting myself before she could clean me out. Because, as Tom said with the wariness of experience, once they know you know, all bets are off and people get desperate. By lunch, I'd met with a divorce attorney Tom recommended, a shark named Patricia Chen who looked at my evidence and actually smiled. Said this is the most documented case of infidelity I've seen in 20 years. She won't get a penny beyond what the law requires. I also did something that felt petty but necessary. I called every restaurant in a 50-mile radius that we'd been to for anniversaries and special occasions and made a reservation for 7 p.m. tonight at Antonio's, the Italian place where we'd had our first date, where I'd known I'd marry her someday, where 13 years later I'd end our marriage. But the reservation wasn't just dinner, it was stage management, because I'd also made some other calls to her parents, my parents, her sister, all under the guise of wanting to surprise Olivia with something special tonight, and asking them to stop by Antonio's around 8 p.m. They all agreed, excited, thinking I was planning some romantic gesture, maybe a vow renewal or pregnancy announcement, having no idea they were about to witness the most painful confrontation of their lives. And as I sat in my office that afternoon, going through the motions of reviewing briefs and taking calls, I felt something shift inside me, a cold clarity that replaced the heartbreak. Because tonight wasn't just about ending a marriage, It was about taking back the narrative she'd stolen from me. Olivia looked stunning when I picked her up at 6:45, wearing a black dress I actually recognized. One she'd worn to her company Christmas party last year, back when I still thought we were happy. She kissed me in the car and said, "This is nice, we should do this more often." And I agreed, said, "Yeah, we really should," and meant it in a way she couldn't possibly understand yet. At Antonio's, we were seated at the same table where we'd sat on that first date, and I'd requested it specifically, wanting to bookend our story in this place that had started it all. She ordered the seafood linguine. I got the chicken parmesan. We shared a bottle of wine. And for 30 minutes, we talked like we used to, about work and friends and stupid things we'd seen online, and it was so normal, so comfortable, that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined everything. That the TikTok live and the secret phone and the engagement had been some horrible nightmare. But then her phone buzzed, the real one on the table, and I saw her glance at it and quickly flip it face down. Saw that micro-expression of guilt flash across her face, and I knew Tyler was texting her, probably asking where she was, why she'd canceled their plans, if everything was okay. "You can check that if you need to," I said casually, and she shook her head. Said, "It's nothing important. Tonight is about us," and I nodded and took a sip of wine to stop myself from screaming. Around 7:50, I excused myself to use the restroom, and on my way, I texted the group, "We're here. Come on in." And by the time I got back to the table, our families were walking through the door, confused but smiling, expecting something celebratory. Olivia's face went pale when she saw them, and she leaned across the table and whispered, "What's going on? What is this?" And I smiled, that same smile I'd been wearing all day, and said just wanted to share something with the people we love. Her mother hugged us both. My dad clapped me on the shoulder. Everyone was pulling up chairs and ordering drinks. And Olivia was looking at me with growing panic in her eyes, realizing this wasn't the romantic dinner she'd thought it was, but not yet understanding what it actually was. When everyone was settled and the waiter had taken drink orders, I stood up, cleared my throat, and said, "Thank you all for coming tonight. There's something important I need to share." And as I pulled out my phone, Olivia's hand shot across the table and grabbed my wrist, her eyes pleading. It had been too late since the moment she'd decided to create that secret life. "Last night," I began, my voice steady despite my hand shaking. At approximately 2:17 a.m., I was scrolling through TikTok and stumbled across a live stream from a place called Club Velvet downtown. The table went quiet, confused faces all around except for Olivia's, which had gone from pale to completely white, her hand still gripping my wrist, like she could physically stop what was coming. On that live stream, I saw my wife, who I thought was asleep in our bed, at a party with a man named Tyler Morrison. I pulled up the screen recording on my phone and held it up. Let them all see the footage of Olivia dancing, kissing, celebrating with a man who wasn't me. And the gasps around the table were like knives, each one cutting through the last remnants of the life we'd pretended to have. Her mother actually stood up, said that can't be. There must be some mistake, but I played the engagement video. Let them hear Tyler propose. Hear Olivia say yes, hear the crowd celebrate. And when it was over, the silence was deafening. 8 months, I continued, looking directly at Olivia now, her face streaked with tears, her mascara running, looking nothing like the glowing woman from the TikTok live. You've been living a completely separate life for 8 months, with a secret phone, secret social media, planning a future with him while coming home to me every night and pretending everything was fine. Her sister started crying. My mom reached over and squeezed my hand. My dad looked like he wanted to put his fist through the wall. And Olivia just sat there shaking her head, saying, "I'm sorry," over and over, like a broken record. Like those words could undo the damage, could rebuild what she'd demolished. "I brought you all here tonight," I said to the group, "because I needed witnesses, needed you to understand why this marriage is over. Needed you to know that I tried, that I loved her, that this wasn't my choice." I pulled out a folder from my bag, the divorce papers Patricia had drawn up that afternoon, and slid them across the table to Olivia. "You wanted to marry Tyler? Go ahead. You're free." The restaurant had gone silent. Other diners watching our table like we were dinner theater, and somewhere in the chaos, Olivia stood up, grabbed my arm, and begged me to please. "Can we talk about this in private?" But there was nothing private about what she'd done. Nothing private about humiliating your spouse on social media for strangers, too. Consume as entertainment as she stood there begging, making promises to explain everything and swearing it's not what it looks like. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger or satisfaction or even pain, but a strange sense of liberation. Because after years of being comfortable, complacent, and blind, I was finally, devastatingly free. 6 months have passed since that night at Antonio's, and I'm sitting in my new apartment, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, drinking my morning coffee in peace that I didn't know was possible after 12 years of sharing space with someone else. The divorce was finalized last month, quick and clean thanks to my documentation, and Olivia got exactly what the law required, and not a penny more. Patricia made sure of that. I heard through mutual friends that she and Tyler broke up 3 weeks after our public confrontation. Apparently, the reality of their relationship couldn't survive once it was no longer a secret. No longer taboo, no longer the exciting affair that made them feel alive. She tried to reach out, sent emails and texts apologizing, explaining that she'd felt lost and unappreciated and had made terrible choices, and maybe part of that was true. Maybe I had been too focused on work, too comfortable, too blind. But none of that excused 8 months of elaborate lies and a public engagement while she was still wearing my ring. The TikTok video of Tyler's proposal went viral, got 4.2 million views, and eventually people connected the dots, figured out she was married. And the comments turned from celebration to condemnation, internet justice in its most brutal form. And while I didn't wish that on her, I also didn't rush to her defense. I've been dating again. Nothing serious. Just remembering what it feels like to meet someone new, to have first kisses and first conversations, to build something from scratch without the weight of betrayal and broken trust. My therapist says I'm doing remarkably well for someone who had their world imploded on a random Thursday night. And I think she's right. Because here's what I learned. Loving someone isn't enough. If they don't love you back with the same honesty and commitment, and sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the door to the best thing that could have happened. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. That night, at 2:17 a.m., when I saw Olivia on that TikTok live, I thought my life was ending, but really, it was just beginning. The real version, the honest version, the one where I don't have to compete with a secret phone, and a man in a leather jacket for my own wife's attention. So if you're listening to this and you're in a relationship that feels off, that has unexplained gaps and convenient excuses and a partner who's more in love with their phone than with you, trust your instincts, ask the hard questions, and don't be afraid of the answers, even if they destroy everything you thought you knew. Because living in a beautiful lie will never be better than building a life on ugly truth. And you deserve someone who chooses you loudly, publicly, without hesitation or secret phones hidden in shoeboxes. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the right person won't make you feel like you're competing for their love. You'll just know you've already won.